Could you just talk about that for a few minutes?
Sure. Sure. First, we have to deal with just the general way that people's minds function. I'll historically call people to point out to them that in World War II, there were a number of times that by miracles, really, there were Jewish people that escaped concentration camps, got back to their cities, and went to their friends and warned them, hey, they've got a program of exterminating all of us. They have these camps where they work us to death and where they shoot us, line us up in ditches and shoot us and on and on. And even though they would be going to their friends, even though their friends would have known them their whole lifetime, and that, it wasn't something they wanted to hear, so they wouldn't believe it. Early on in the World War II, after the United States came into the war, the Germans landed 2 teams of saboteurs in America, and the guy who was in charge of it actually didn't like Hitler and the Nazis, and he immediately defected to the FBI, and he told the FBI that when he had been in Germany, that he had learned about how the Einsatz group and were going through Eastern Europe and shooting Jews in the back of the head by the hundreds and thousands, and they weren't even interested in hearing what he had to say. The FBI just turned them off and changed the subject. So this is the natural human response to information that we don't like. Well, where this plays a role for the Illuminati is, let's go back and people ask themselves, who built my frame of reference? As you are a child and you're growing up, the television, the state-controlled education system, all of these things are contributing to your frame of reference, your worldview. And so when we ask ourselves, who built our worldview, we come to realize that other people around us did that, and the Illuminati have been very skillful that they operate outside the box of what people's thinking is. Are we still coming through clear?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Clear as a bell and resonating.
Okay.
Absolutely, as far as that, right, you were spot on. That's the whole thing. It's now how can we how is a more effective way that we can alert people to this paradigm? Like, I mean, you tell them history and then they still laugh at you. You tell them that like what you just was saying, all those things. And now we know what happened. We know Hitler killed people. We know how many he killed. We know Stalin. We know all of these tyrants.
Fritz, since we're talking about Hitler, can you go into a little bit with your book about Hitler and his bloodline, and maybe a little bit into really with the Aryan race or
oh yeah, the
what that was
Rothschilds.
about?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure at what level to speak at. Hitler's mother worked for the Rothschilds and was impregnated, and Hitler was a secret descendant of the Rothschilds. One of the first things he did when he went into Austria on the Einfluss, where they joined Austria and Germany together, he had people move in and took control of the records that showed that would have identified him back to the Rothschilds. His actual birth name was Schicklgruber, but if you try to, Hail Schicklgruber just doesn't ring very well. So he was very fortunate that he changed his name to Hitler because it has a much better ring to it.
Yeah.
They did the name change and did a good job of hiding where his origins had come from. when he finished World War II, I said that wrong. When he finished World War I, he was placed in a hospital, and that was the point in time where they gave him his heavy-duty mind control programming for his mission in life. He was a programmed multiple with multiple personality, and that will help people understand history, because at the very same time that he was convincingly giving the British assurances that he would do such and such, he could turn around the next hour and go in a totally different direction with his generals and be talking to them about the preparations that they needed to do for World War II. So he had this multiple personality disorder that allowed him to flip in many different directions, which would deceive people. So he was set up, and he was funded by very powerful people for his mission. He didn't just happen. The phenomenon of Nazism and Hitler just didn't happen isolated. It was something that was stage managed, and there was occult societies, the Brill Society, the Germanen Society, the Thule Gesellschaft. There were different secret German Knights Templar group. There were different occult groups that were behind the foundation of the creation of Nazism and supported Hitler's rise to power.
Now, isn't there also in your book you talk about Abraham Lincoln? Isn't there something also in your book you show who he's really, who his real father is? Can you get into that?
Yeah, that's one thing. A lot of these people have secret genealogies. Bill Clinton, who wasn't born Bill Clinton, by the way, his birth name was something else. But these people, the genealogies behind them are oftentimes muddied up. And Abraham Lincoln, both his mother and so-called father are obscured. But what we were able to find out was we were able to track down that his mother worked for the Springs, or visited the Springs, and while she was at Springs were a line of the Rothschilds, and she was impregnated there, and this whole thing about Thomas Lincoln was a strange way they got garbled together. The whole history is being muddied up. Yes, he was a descendant of the Rothschilds, and when he grew up, he was a railroad lawyer. He was a big corporation attorney for the big boys. The Illuminati went into building railroads. The capital involved in building a railroad is way beyond the capabilities of a normal person. You had to be very exceptionally rich person. And so the Illuminati, working through their people in the government, got special concessions and had the money to build these railroads. And so Abraham Lincoln was a railroad attorney. Of course, his popular image is that he was out there with an axe chopping wood,
Fritz, I don't want to Fritz, I don't want to interrupt.
He's a lot more honest than being a railroad attorney.
Exactly.
Being a big corporate attorney.
But
we don't think of him as being a big corporate attorney, but that's what he was.
yeah, he was a corporate attorney.
And then we discovered that he had a lot of hidden things in his life. And when I talk about Abraham Lincoln or people like Lincoln and Benjamin Franklin, it's not that I had any axe to grind against these people. When I was a teenager, there were certain people that I chose in history to emulate. I wanted to study their life in detail, and I wanted to use their life as an example. And for instance, Benjamin Franklin. And I came to find out that Benjamin Franklin was the primary mason. He was the head mason over several Masonic bodies in what later became the United States in the colony. He also was head of French Freemason over in France. And he was Postmaster General, and he was head of the Rosicrucians. And when he was in places like France and England, he participated in the Hellfire Club and Satanic Rites. In fact, they even found in the house that he was in London, they found the children's remains that were used sacrificially.
I've reported that.
And so, I went there and studied Benjamin Franklin and Abraham Lincoln with very positive attitudes towards these people to emulate their good side. It's not like they were entirely evil. There were some very admirable traits to all of them. But historians have oftentimes wondered why Benjamin Franklin had so much power. Well, he had so much power because he was the head of all of these occult groups.
Yeah.
Some of them were Illuminati groups, and
also I know I know that you are big into the Civil War. I've heard you say in the past too that was one of your things you really like to research, and you found out a lot about that with Ulysses Grant and others. You want to talk about that a little?
Say again, you came in broken.
About the Civil War. I know that was one of your topics you like to talk about. Do you want to talk about Ulysses? Yeah.
I talk about the Civil War. Well, in order to create wars, a lot of things have to happen. And if we look at the causes of the Civil War, we'll see many different causes. We'll also see lots of strings being pulled. And where I want to tie this in is you're in Connecticut. And Connecticut, that area had a role in the Civil War. For some reason, Connecticut has been very active in these wars, like George Washington's army in New York City before the British attacked. Half of the soldiers were from Connecticut, and then when the Civil War happened, a large share of Connecticut outdid themselves by providing soldiers, and they've built a lot of war munitions in Connecticut.
And they still do. It's the head of the military-industrial. That's what drives this state, the military-industrial complex, Fritz. It's it.
Exactly. And one of the Illuminati families, the DuPonts, have a lot of their munitions factories in Delaware. The state of Delaware has been run by the DuPonts. But Connecticut's had a lot of war industry all along and has been really a big participant in all of the wars, providing a lot of munitions and soldiers. So going back, I'm connecting all of this and trying to connect a bunch of different trails here. The Collins family, which was an Illuminati family that came over with the Puritans, there were satanic families that came over under the disguise of the being Puritans, and the Collins family was one of those.